what if this is just a 17-year streak of bad luck? What if things are about to turn around?
Oh, do we have to see our husbands all the time? Is that a thing that people have to do?
I'm 35 years old now, and you feel like the butterflies in your tummy. I haven't felt that feeling in a long time. I always find that I attract these like guys are like, they're like energy vampires. No energy vampires, no.
I've waited for so long. It's been 5 years that I have dated someone. Now, if I date someone, it has to be it. Still, I can't survive without my parents.
Relationship anxiety is anxiety about having a strong emotional connection, which is a fancy way of saying fear of intimacy. It's also the struggle to connect on a deeper level, which prevents a person from establishing and maintaining meaningful relationships in life. And this fear of being close leads to sabotaging relationships before things get too intense or real. And for the sake of this video, we're breaking down this relationship anxiety into 3 types. The first type is the fear of separation from the safety of the home, from the safety of the parents. The second is the fear of being completely engulfed and swallowed up by love. And the third is the fear of giving in to emotion, giving in to tenderness and softness. But before we break down those 3 archetypes with specific examples from the show, I want to talk about general signs of relationship anxiety. The first is perfectionism, which is this extreme need to be perfect, which I think is covering up shame. Because when you think about it in our society, like our society rewards perfectionism. Like when people complain about it, it's like, oh, I'm so tired of trying to be perfect. But they're secretly giving themselves a pat on the back because actually our society rewards us trying to be perfect. And what is perfectionism? It's actually hiding this shame that you are imperfect, this yearning to be perfect so you become worthy of love. And Roshali, the supermodel who won Miss Delhi, really sums that up.
Like, I have a notion for perfect daughter, perfect wife, perfect girlfriend. वो मेरे दिमाग में ही है.
And also Aparna from season 1, when that guy took her on this axe throwing date, and axe throwing was this one thing that she doesn't know how to do, and she was getting really worked up that she doesn't know how to do it well.
Gotta be an easier way to do this. He was very supportive of the fact that I maybe didn't like that I wasn't good at something.
And the second sign of relationship anxiety, not the archetypes, which we're going to get into in detail, I'm just talking about the general signs. The second sign is trust issues, which is avoiding connecting on a deeper level because you're anticipating betrayal.
What happened to your previous marriage?
So we were together for 11 years. We put a lot of things under the carpet, and essentially, you know, he wasn't a very trustworthy person in the end.
And the third sign is difficulty stating one's needs, which is basically not being able to express what you want in a partner because you're actually confused about what you want in a partner, which leads to the confusion of the other partner with you. And that's when a relationship cannot continue. Like take Roshali, for example. Her whole thing is that what she wants, the only thing that she states she wants really clearly is to be close to her mother, which is crazy because you're supposed to be highlighting what's more important to you in the person. And yes, she says, I want them to be cute and like poetry. But the thing she keeps going back to is that she wants to be near her mom.
कहीं पे भी shoot हो, कुछ भी हो, I want कि मैं जाऊँ, shoot करूँ, and then back to Delhi. I want to be where my mother is. कि रात को मैं सुबह उठूँ, मुझे वो खाना मिले जो मेरी मम्मी.
And for me, that is being unaware of what you want in a partner because you can't imagine yourself being with a partner. Or Aparna, the lawyer from season 1, who is always presenting herself and describing herself as someone who's very decisive and knows exactly what she wants.
If someone doesn't like me, I think that's their problem, not mine. Because I like me.
But actually, if you scratch the surface and you go back to something what she said about her childhood.
I always knew I was going to go to law school. I decided when I was 7. So
You want to be a lawyer?
Yes. So I don't know. I think I also wanted to be a hairdresser.
Oh.
And you know she doesn't like her job as a lawyer when she goes on this date with that guy Shaker, who's also a lawyer. And she tells him, I actually don't enjoy being a lawyer.
You like it?
I love being a lawyer. Yeah, absolutely love it.
I'm like, huh, that's weird.
Okay. Do you like being a lawyer?
No, not particularly.
And the fourth sign is having a hard time with physical contact or being close. And you really see that with Priya. After this whole like back and forth she did with Vim, which we're going to talk about in this video. But in the end, when they were on the bench in the park, when things became okay again, and he pulled her closer to him.
Okay.
Right.
Bit of an awkward hug. I'm giving this
You're so shy.
And the fifth sign is serial dating, which is basically when things get serious with somebody, you have the urge to dump them and move on to somebody else because you don't want things to become too real. And you really see that with Aparna, who, okay, for the sake of the show, I mean, the way it was edited, they showed her as going on so many dates, more than the others. And there was an actual montage in the season 1 when Aparna was going from one date to the next. But Seema Auntie, the matchmaker of the show, describes Aparna perfectly.
I think Aparna doesn't want to show her feelings. And I think she has a block in her energies.
But my favorite quote from Seema Auntie is when she's talking about Roshali, the one who's attached to her mom. Because Roshali writes poetry and she was saying a criteria for her is that the man writes poetry.
I think Rushali is too influenced by films and fairy tales. I think she doesn't have to marry a poet. She can always read a book.
And in honor of Seema Auntie, this week I'm playing a character who also has this kind of grandma sensibility and relationship advice. And I'm calling her Goldie because for her voice, I used the voice of Goldie Hawn from an interview Goldie Hawn did with Oprah in the 80s, where she spoke about her relationship with Kurt Russell, which has really withstood the test of time. So, take it away, Goldie.
I don't argue over those kind of things that people suddenly argue about, and suddenly they're at the end of a relationship or a marriage and they're not sure why. What happened? How did it go wrong? Expectation is a very dangerous thing.
Hey you guys, it's me, Denial, your drag therapist. So this period is extra busy because in 2 weeks I'm gonna go perform in the UK and then I come back for a little bit and then I go perform in LA. But I'm also working on so many projects, including my upcoming show which is gonna premiere in September. So this period is a little bit hectic. But the channel is growing thanks to you guys. And speaking of growth, please leave a comment about your experiences with relationship anxiety because I know you have some because I have some. And as I always say, Auntie Seema, I'm in denial so these girls can wake up.
You're right.
So let's start with the first archetype of relationship anxiety, which is the fear of engulfment. Fear of being completely controlled and dominated by the other person. And it's basically the fear of losing yourself in a relationship, so you just push anyone who gets too close. And this stems from past experiences.
Whenever I go on dates, I always feel like I'm the person that brings the energy to the date. They just sit there and they just take all your energy. You come out and you feel really depleted, but they feel great.
So if we look at Priya and her fear of being, taken over by love, when the show first started, when Seema Auntie was matching her up with guys, she went on a couple of dates, and I don't blame her for those not working out, because first there was this guy called Bobby who was kind of like sweet, but he's definitely the friend zone kind of guy. And then this date when they went dancing with these weird shoes that he was wearing, and then he was trying to be funny and talking about the wine.
Yes, you can taste the where is it from?
Girl, no. You're sweet, but no. And then she went on a date with this guy called Jay with zero chemistry.
I am looking as well something where there is a good chemistry.
But then she finally met this guy Vim who matches her criteria perfectly. She was actually asking for a guy with a top knot.
Top knot is like, I'm all over it.
She got all of that. And first she was very attracted to him.
I personally, I love a top knot.
Thank you.
I love a top knot. I'm a top knot appreciator.
Okay.
So she got the guy that she wanted, not just in terms of looks, but also he was sweet and loving and there was a flow. And he actually adored her.
And I think she's got a smile to die for.
I feel like he's definitely more my type.
And she was even gushing when she was telling her friends about it.
We really hit it off.
And then came the second date. And here you could already feel she was starting to preempt disaster.
When I first met him, I felt like a bit like, ooh, this is nice. Made me forget a little bit butterflies in my stomach. But there's been times in the past when I've dated people and I have been like really excited about them. And then it just went to shit.
Those deep-seated fears, they just come up and like, hey girl, we're here. Destruction. And all this why? Because the poor guy made the mistake of actually being open and telling her how much he likes her.
What's your ideal partner? Tell me.
You tick every single box.
Okay.
You can already see her getting engulfed just by that expression on her face. Like, okay, you're not supposed to tell me how much you like me. You're not following the script where you're supposed to hurt me. And there was one part where I found really interesting when he was telling her about like, he's just tired of playing games.
One of the main things which I've noticed is when a relationship starts off, there's no point playing loads of games.
I think everything in moderation.
She's like, everything in moderation. Like what? You want to play games in moderation? Like, why, girl? Why?
He put me on a pedestal and I felt like I hadn't really earned that. And I was a bit like, okay, this is a bit much.
The point, in fact, is that to have that fear, you're just sort of beating yourself up for no reason.
And it wasn't just Goldie who gave Priya good advice. Seema Auntie did as well.
I get the sense from him that he likes me a lot and I have to like him as much as he likes me. It's not just a one-way street.
Initially, you like
And thankfully, she took Seema's advice and met up with Vim and actually expressed how she feels. And this is something we could all learn from, because how many of us just sit on those feelings, harboring resentment and just expecting the other person to be a mind reader, and not just in romantic relationships. Granted, you're not always going to get what you want when you open up, but that ugly feeling in the pit of your stomach from just sitting on something will be released once you express what it is that you don't like. And my favorite part about this whole thing is how Vim reacted to her opening up. He basically told her, yeah, sure, maybe I came on too strong, but you need to also learn how to receive love, girl.
When I think about it, I probably said some things you're like, whoa, you need to kind of just be a bit, slow down slightly. At the same time, like, you need to probably learn a little bit, and no offense, just to appreciate and just receive.
And she did, thankfully. But I have a lot of sympathy for someone like Priya, and actually all the girls that I'm analyzing in this video. And to be honest, literally everyone I analyze in every video, I see myself in them. But here specifically for Priya, like her difficulty to open up and be vulnerable.
It can be quite terrifying, and it takes time for you to open up, and to open up in a way that is genuine.
Preach, girl, preach.
Using a matchmaker has been a really interesting experience for me. I'm not as vulnerable as I thought I was.
Speaking of vulnerability, let's move on to the second archetype, which is embodied by Aparna from season 1. And yeah, for me, Aparna is truly the embodiment of that fear of vulnerability, fear of surrendering to the feelings, fear of showing that you actually want love and that you can be tender, because she's always just, there's this guard up.
You have to adjust and...
There's nothing about me that I think I need to change or evolve or grow into to be a better partner.
Yeah, Aparna does this thing, which is kind of like, it's cute when you're a teenager, or understandable when you're a teenager, when you're like, I hate everything. My God. Like when Seema auntie was setting her up for the first date with Srini, and she was telling her, oh, but he appreciates sense of humor.
Very nice person who understands sense of humor.
You know how I hate comedy.
Or that second date when she went on with this guy and he's telling her about relaxing, and his idea of relaxing is being on a beach, and she's like, I hate beaches.
That's like my worst nightmare. Like, do not ever make me lay on a beach for more than like 3 hours.
What would be like a relaxing 10 days for you? What would you do for 10 days?
Why did you put the word relaxing in front of it?
Can you relax?
Like, why would you relax for 10 days? That's weird.
Or when she met that lawyer that she actually liked, and unfortunately he didn't like her back, but the way she described, she's like, I don't hate him, which is something for me.
I don't hate him. That's a big deal, though. I want to be very clear. That's a big deal that I don't dislike someone after a first date.
I mean, on one level, I do get her resistance and this insistence on being picky or finding the right person.
You don't pick your parents, you don't pick your siblings, you don't pick your children. I think the only family member you select is your spouse. It's the biggest choice you'll make.
And Aparna makes a really good point there. And speaking of her family, I think Aparna's fear of vulnerability or surrendering to just this feeling of being in love with somebody comes from this deep-seated fear of abandonment. And I believe that fear was planted in Aparna by her mother, who decided to leave that arranged marriage that she was forced into as a young woman and took the kids.
When I was 19, I got engaged. I was put under a lot of pressure. My parents were, and that was transferred to me. I was very unhappy. We got divorced in 1993. And I left with my 2 children. So they were 6 and 8 almost.
And I'm sure Aparna's mother had her reasons for doing that, and maybe Aparna's dad was somebody who you could not stay with. But I'm talking from the perspective of the child. When you have a loss of a parent, even in death, you experience that as abandonment. And then that is so painful that you will do anything not to experience it again, so you just shut everyone out.
I believe every human being has the right in their life to make life choices. I was not given that opportunity to make a decision for my life. So I want my child to have every possible choice.
And parents do that in an effort to run from their past and wanting something better for their children. They actually become blind to the needs of the child. So they just impose what they wanted for themselves in the past onto the child without actually listening to what the child wanted. Love you, Mom. You know, it's so funny, like right now I'm actually developing my new show for September. It's called All About Me and My Mother, and I'm gonna be playing myself and my mother. Girl. You have no idea what's in store for you. This show, I'm doing it because I'm finally in a place where for the lack of a better word, I forgive my mom. It's not that I have nothing to forgive anyway, because she brought me into this world and she gave me all those amazing things that brought me here to you. So I'm very grateful. But you know, we went through a journey, and I think for me, like now I'm understanding where parents come from. So even though I'm maybe criticizing Aparna's mother, I get it, girl. I get it. Parenting is hard. That's why I'm avoiding it. And you can really see in the show how Aparna's mom discourages Aparna from going on those dates. Like there was one point where she was telling Aparna like about one of the guys, like, no, this is not working. You need to be wowed.
He has to wow you, Aparna.
She's actually talking about herself. Like, I needed to be wowed when I was young instead of being forced into a marriage. Like when Seema Auntie brought that first match for Aparna and her mom decided, oh, he's too laid back for Aparna. Like, do you actually hear what you're saying? Like, how can someone be too laid back? Like, as if that's a bad thing. Actually, just for the mere fact that your daughter is so ambitious and driven, actually a good match for her would be someone who's actually chill.
It would be hard for Aparna to be with somebody who's very laid back. It would actually bother her.
But Seema Auntie clocked it.
So usually the mother, she helps you. But I think some negative vibes were coming from her.
And sure enough, Aparna just decided that that guy is not good enough, which was so interesting because they went on this date, which was kind of sweet. And then he was telling her about what he does and that he writes books and he does podcasts and he gives keynote speeches. And she's like, that's not ambitious enough.
What do you actually do?
So I write books.
Okay.
I host this podcast and I do a lot of keynote speeches.
I'm someone who is very driven and ambitious. He wasn't very ambitious about his own career path or his own trajectory.
That's a little alarming to me.
Well, we could go eat something.
Yeah. Quite quickly I realized, not for me.
Ambition is overrated. And that's coming from someone who is really ambitious. Like for me, you know, ambition and drive looks good from the outside, like to people. People are always impressed by you, like, oh my God, you work so hard. But you're literally like running on empty. This drive, it's like, it's very, dare I say, driven by anxiety. But it's rewarded in our society as if it's this amazing thing. And it is, but it's good to balance it out with some, you know what I mean, girl? Sorry, I'm actually sweating because now it's almost summertime, like it's starting to get hot. And with this wig on and the makeup, girl, I'm sweating. I know I make it look effortless, but it isn't. And in the end, Aparna does go on a date with a guy that she clicks with called Jay. Their first date is like they do this yoga with goats, which is so cute. But then she loses interest in him because in season 2, she moves to New York and continues to like try and date Jay, and it just falls apart. And then she goes on other dates, like a friend sets her up with their cousin and she ends up yawning in the middle of the date.
Actually, the last few years, LA life has been work, really, to be honest with you, yeah. And I enjoy it, like that's...
Yeah, basically Aparna went back to that like, I'm so over it. Which is really another way of saying, I don't want to give in to anyone. So I'm just gonna be like, the first person to reject them. Like, boring. Girl. But Goldie wants to give Aparna some advice about this rejection of people right off the bat.
You know, you learn to accept people for basically, I mean, it sounds a little cliche, but for what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, learning someone and loving someone, let's say loving someone is easy. It happens fast. It's, you get caught up with the thrust of it and it's sexy and it's exciting. But what happens then is that all of a sudden this great illusion that you've built suddenly begins to crumble.
And eventually Aparna decided not to return to season 3, and instead she wrote this book called She's Unlikable and Other Lies That Bring Women Down, which is a kind of like a very defiant book in which, again, she dedicates a lot of time to talking about her mom's bravery in the choice that she makes. You can almost feel like she's subconsciously following her mother's example. And in the end, she ended up being with her mother, the way it was shown on the show in the end of season 2, where she just had a scene with her mom. And there was actually a sweet moment in that where you can really feel her mother's fears. Like she actually wants the best for her daughter, but they're both kind of like maybe a little bit lost.
Watching her, if she feels unstable or not yet settled, those vibrations affect me.
And she does give her good advice. Like, you don't actually have to make a decision right now. Just enjoy this moment.
It's very tempting to want to make a decision about any given thing and just tie it up in a bow and end it. The decision will come to you. You're very decisive.
Today I don't have to decide.
No.
Thank goodness. I couldn't really decide what cookie I wanted, so it's probably best that I didn't decide what life partner I wanted.
And speaking of being enmeshed with the parents and all of that, let's move on to the third archetype, which is literally that. Like, the fear is actually separation anxiety from the parents, which is Roshali. Yeah, Roshali is this model who works in the film industry, and she's traveling, shooting in the States and Russia and all over the place. And, you know, by all accounts, like, she's this very independent woman, yet she can't be away from her mom.
Auntie, that's my mom.
I have seen many mama's boys, but Rishali is my first mama's girl. कैसे होगा Rishali? तू बता मुझे. Mom तो रहेगी नहीं तेरे साथ आगे 24 घंटे. फिर
That's what I keep telling her, and she always tells me कि Mama, I want someone who is equal to you. I said, where will you get a boy like mom?
And as someone who comes from a history of family with a lot of enmeshment, hey mom. No, but I recognize the excuses that a grown-up child like that makes. Like, she says, oh, but they've done so much for me, which is great. Of course, you have to honor and love and respect your parents, but that doesn't mean you can't move on, girl, with your life. Roshali, girl.
My parents, they've given up their life, you know, to see me, you know, to see me get like everything in the world that I want.
And again, like with the case of Aparna, this is a two-way street. Like, this fear is planted in the child by the parent, and you really see it with Roshali's mother.
It is not easy to say, if I get married, I'll lose my parents, you know. You can't, you know, sail in two boats.
Yeah, just that her description of marriage is the loss of the parents, and now you can't sail on two boats. Like, girl. Like, when Seema Auntie brings her the CVs of those guys, already the mother is scared. I'm already feeling tense.
I got some few matches for you.
Crazy. मुझे तो अभी से टेंशन हो रही है.
क्यों? टेंशन क्यों करना है भाई?
She's so attached to me. I mean, she'd never. अभी भी shoot के लिए गई थी. She went to Russia for this shoot, and she was continuously calling me up. Ki, Mama, I'm missing you. I'm missing your food, Mama.
And then, funny enough, she finds her a date who matches her criteria perfectly. Cute, handsome, tall, works in the film industry, writes poetry. And then they go on this date, and they're bonding, and they're laughing, and the chemistry is definitely there. And then it gets awkward as hell when the subject of the parents are brought up.
How is staying with parents? I want to talk about that.
It's pretty good, I think.
That's very different for me.
Is it? I stay with my parents. I prefer it that way, I think.
Okay.
You know?
So that's like a safe comfort zone.
It is.
Right?
It is. It is. It is.
Yeah, and when the guy, Tushar, like, makes a very valid comment about, like, you know, I appreciate that you're close to your parents, but for me, boundaries are important. She ends up, like, coming to the defense, like, you know, all parents are like that.
My mom still thinks that I'm 10-year-old,
yes.
which I'm not. So it's like just having those boundaries. Like,
I know. They're, you know, mothers. They just can't help it.
What else is left to discuss?
I think we've covered almost everything.
And later, Seema Auntie, like, sends her to a relationship advisor or a life coach where you really go into the history of Roshali. Basically, she was sent to a boarding school when she was 4 because the fights between her parents were so intense that her mom had to move her away from that so she doesn't see that. So there you can already see why the fear of, you know, a relationship not working out, where that comes from. And because her parents are, like, interfaith, 2 different religions in India, and that is a big deal.
I was sent in a boarding school. I was 4 years old.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah. They were both working and too much of drama at home. So my mom wanted me to be away from all of that.
All of that. Some way, do you think the environment at home may have colored your view of relationships and made you a little more wary, maybe?
And the wall is so thick. It is so thick that it's very difficult that it'll break or my guard will come down.
Love is not only about giving. Receiving is also a way to love.
And another wise person by the name of Goldie wants to give Roshali some advice.
Well, in fact, the key is to just go in there and understand the things that make you happy and how you can make them happy. And then all these little differences that you have, they don't count.
How nice.
The key is not to create the illusion.
Yeah, in conclusion, guys, if you find yourself dealing with kind of a relationship anxiety where you're just avoiding intimacy at all costs, yeah, it's good to seek help, whether it's a therapist or a wise friend, because that person is another pair of eyes to help you have an honest look at yourself. and address the root causes of why you became the way that you are. And learn how to communicate your needs better, because that's what it's about. And this brings us to the end of the video. Guys, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you happen to be in the UK or near Los Angeles in the next couple of months, please come and see me. Links below.